This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Agun Erev Shabbos Shabbosai. As we prepare for Parshas Mikeitz, Tavshin, Pei, Aleph, we're now going to do the Parsha segment of today's Shiur, and already for the second week, we have a new Parsha sheet, which is available. You could get this courtesy if you go to our website, rabbidg.com, and you subscribe. It will be sent to you for courtesy. And we're calling it Likutei ben La'ashri. As you see in the left-hand column on the top, this is a picture of the tzaddik of Ranana. He was a resident of Sachachav, and he was a Sagi Nahar. You can't see his eyes that well, but he was somebody who was an ani ve'evyon. He was very poor. He survived the Holocaust, but many Rebbes were very big admirers of him, especially the Gera Rebbe. And supposedly, my great-grandfather, Zechat Tzaddik in Sachachav, was his chavrusa, and I am in possession of many of his manuscripts, and we're trying to put together his choice Divrei Torah. Last week we called it Penine. This week we're calling it Likutei, because Likutei has in it the initials of my great-grandfather, who was the last Rav of Sachachav, Yehuda Leib Volman Hashem Yimkom Damai. So we're going to begin with the first piece. Now, the first piece I already said over in a shiur this week, so I'm just going to say it over very briefly. It's quite interesting. Rashi, in the opening of the Parsha, in the dream of Parai, where Parai, V'hinei min haya'ar oilos, from the river it came up. So Rashi says, the only river that is called Ya'ar is the Nilus, because every other river is basically a natural river, but the Nilus is branched off into so many man-made channels and canals, and the Nilus rises up and goes into it, so the only river called a Ya'ar is the Nilus. And the Ramban asks, what are you talking about? The Chidekel, the Tigris, is also called Ya'ar in the Navi. So the Tzaddik Ranana answers up Rashi that the truth is that in the time of the Torah, the only Ya'ar was Mitzrayim, because nobody had a need to be in any other land. Mitzrayim was sort of the source of all wisdom in the world. But we know that after the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim had a downfall, and the wisdom of Mitzrayim waned, and the wisdom of Shlomo became widespread, and everyone came to Shlomo to learn Chachma, and then Klal Yisrael went to Bavel, and the Chachma went to there. So now, the Chidekel passes on the east side of Ashur, which is Armenia, Hatzachicha. What does Hatzachicha mean? I don't know. But the country of Armenia. Therefore, the rabbis who lived in Armenia advised the Gentiles there that what used to be done in the Nilus, you should do to the Chidekel, and this way you will rise up and water your lands. And therefore, the Navi, who's talking already about the time of Galus Bavel, he calls the Chidekel a Ya'ar. Says at Ranana, I remember when I was in Uzbekistan, I went to the Chidekel and I was toivel there. That's the river that comes out of Eden. And the people living there made Ya'arim throughout the land, and they drew water from man-made canals from the Chidekel. So they don't have to tolerate. It means arid? Armenia Hatzachicha. Really? Let's see. Where is it? Oh, Shu Eretz Armenia Tzechicha. Oh, thank you. Rav Nosson saying Tzechicha means it's arid. So I guess because it was arid, they had to make canals to water the land, and this way it wouldn't suffer from a lack of rain. And the bottom line is, says it's Agaranana, that he was toivel in that river, and their intention was to sort of mimic Mitzrayim. Okay, let's go on to the next piece. Nar Ivri Eved. The Saramashkim says, Vishami Tanu Nar Ivri Eved, right? So Rashi brings Ivri, he doesn't even know Hebrew. Excuse me, Ivri, he doesn't even know Egyptian. He doesn't even know our language. So the Chemda Shloimeh asks, how could the Saramashkim lie to Paroi that Yosef was 12 years in Mitzrayim and he didn't speak Egyptian? I mean, come on. We mean, Vishami Tanu Nar Ivri Eved Ladeinov. Rashi says from Chazal, Ivri doesn't even know our language. I don't know, so how was he talking for 12 years over there? So it's very doichek. Now, says Tzak Renan an amazing thing. I searched to find the words of Rashi in the Medrash, and I didn't find anything. In other words, this language of Rashi, he doesn't even know our language, is not found in the Medrash. The Medrash just says, even in the Yalkut, Ela Ivri Soine, he hates us. So listen to this very creative shot. When Rashi says he's not makir our language, it doesn't mean he doesn't know it. Yosef knows Egyptian. Einoi makir means he disparages our language. He's not goyres our language. The same way the Arabs, they're not makir Medinas Yisrael. They're not makir the state of Israel. They don't know what the state of Israel is. They know what the state of Israel is. Very, very well they know what it is. But they're not makir it, meaning they don't recognize it to be a reality because they're not goyres it. That's what it means that Yosef was not makir Egyptian, not that he didn't know it. Sure, he spoke Egyptian, but he was not goyres the language. He was disparaged the language of Egyptian. That's what Rashi means, that Yosef was not makir the language. Now, here's a very interesting drush. The Saramashkim tells Paroi, I dreamed, and the baker dreamed. V'haya kasher pasar lanu, and it was as he interpreted, Kein haya oisi heishav alkani v'oisei sala. To me, he restored to my position, and to him he hung. Says the Tzadik Ranana, wait a second. The language here is very superfluous. First, the Saramashkim says, as he interpreted, that's what happened. And then it says, I was restored and he was hung. So why does it have to say, I was restored and he was hung? That's what happened. Or just say, V'haya kasher pasar lanu. V'haya, it happened, kasher pasar lanu. Why does it have to say, as he interpreted us, it happened, and it happened that I was restored and he was hung. If that's what the Saramashkim said, then they knew what it was. Next, how is there any indication that this was because Yosef's interpretation was accurate? Maybe. The bottom line is that it's very likely when a king judges two people, one he lets live and one he kills. It's basically like, traffic violations. If the guy before you won the case, you're going to lose the case. If the guy before you lost, you're going to win. It's not brilliant. Yosef said that if we flip a coin, it's going to be heads. Shkoyach. I mean, he has a pretty good chance. It's not like Yosef. Yosef said either that he's going to be restored, or and the other one's going to die. It's midar chateva. Me'adarabba. The fact that the first one died and the baker was killed, so that caused the king's anger to subside, and he was meichel the second one. So once the Ha'ifim was hung, the Saramashkim was saved. Who says it was because of Yosef's interpretation? Maybe Yosef made an educated guess. Says the Tzaddik of Ranana, that's why it repeats not only Kein Haya, but Oisi Heishiv Alkani, I was restored. So don't say that I was restored because the king calmed down. Because Adarabba, he didn't calm down. He hung the other guy after. It must be, if I was restored and he was hung, it's because of the interpretation of Yosef. Furthermore, he says, I was restored to my capacity. That is a raya to Yosef's interpretation. Why? Because if it's just that the king calmed down, you know what the king should have said? All right, this bad butler, let him save his skin and get lost. But that he should not only be spared, but he should get his job back? I mean, what's the likelihood of that? If you have a butler and he doesn't do a good job, okay, so you don't want to kill him, don't kill him, but you're not going to put him back in his job. You know, it's like a guy. Imagine a guy has a pizza store and he's caught red-handed that he's using treif cheese. So aside from the fact the guy should be arrested, no one in the right mind is going to give the guy a hechsher again. So not only that the guy should not only to be able to walk the streets, he's able to open the store again. There's something odd over here. It must be this Yosef guy knows what he's doing. Okay, next. Vayomer Paro el Avot. The Paro said to his servants, "Hanimsa kazeh ish asher ruach Elokim bai." Is there found? Can we find a guy like this that the Spirit of God is in? Vayomer Paro acharei odi Elokim ha'eschos kozeh ein novay v'chacham kamecha. There's no one like him. Hadavar pela achar shekol chachamav lo yachol loymer afilu apisrain. It's a pella. All the sages, they couldn't even say the interpretation. And Yosef knew even the dream, like Chazal say in the Medrash. Shabachan l'shanois loy mikafi shachalam. Chazal say in the Medrash, Paro started changing the details, and Yosef says, no, that's not what you dreamt. And Paro was moideh. And he said, meaning Paro acknowledged that Yosef's knowledge was supernatural over here. Because Paro tried to trick Yosef. Paro said, I saw in my dream a flying elephant. Yosef said, you didn't see no flying elephants. So clearly Paro understood that Yosef had supernatural knowledge, so why is he saying, Ein navain v'chacham kamaycha? It's not chachma, it's not bina. Says the Tzaddik Ranana, the Gemara says in Nedarim on Lamed Chesam and Aleph, Ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Masher Shechinasai. God does not reside His Shechina only on someone who's strong, wise, and wealthy. So Paro says, I know it was God. God clearly was Shoyer Shechina on you, and not on my Chachamim. It must be if God rested on you and not on my Chachamim, that my Chachamim relative to you are not Chachamim. You are much more muflag b'chachma. If God told you this, you're a real Chacham. Next, this is one of my favorites. Parshas Mikeitz is very unique. In that, Rashi quotes the Targum in this week's Parsha more than any other Parsha in the Torah. Why? Why is Rashi quoting the Targum so much? He says, since Chanukah is always on Parshas Mikeitz, you see this? I think he just means Chanukah is always the week of Parshas Mikeitz. And we know Ner Chanukah b'Smoil, Ner Chanukah is on the left side, which the deeper meaning of that is to illuminate even the Bechina of the Midas Hadin, the left. Targum represents the Achirayim, the Smoil, the left side, the Midas Hadin. So the reason Rashi quotes Targum is, this is the week of Chanukah, of the ability of Torah to be mashpia even on the Achirayim and the Smoil. Okay, interesting. Next. Why did Paro change Yosef's name? You know, Paro sees he's wise, Paro sees he's godly, Paro sees he's talented. So Paro says, hey, Vayikra Paro Shem Yosef Tzafnas Paneach. Why did he change his name? We know there's something called the Shem HaEtzem and the Shem HaTayar. The Shem HaEtzem is your inherent name. Your Shem HaTayar is a name that describes you. It's not your essential name. Like the Gemara says in Eruvin. Loi Reb Meir Shemai, Ela Nahairai Shemai, V'lama Nikra Shemai Meir, Shemeir Einei Chachamim B'Torah. And then the Gemara says, Loi Nahairai Shemai, Ela Reb Nechemia Shemai, V'lama Nikra Nahairai, Shemaner Kol Chachamim Etzlai. There's a name that describes you, and there's a name Ha'etzem. The name Ha'etzem is the source of your life. Like the pasuk says, V'chol asher yikolai adam nefesh chaya, anything that is called to a living spirit, he Shema is his name. Meaning the name represents your life. In the Sefer HaKadosh, Pri Haaretz, he says it's Mekubal Etzleinu, that the shame that a person calls his son at the time of a milah is from Ruach HaKodesh, Milamala. And just like the shoresh of the soul of a child, part of it, they give the father to call him, even though before he was born, nobody knew what his name is. Beruach HaKodesh, God gives the father the right name from where the child's soul will come from. However, a person's Shem HaTayar description, which is, rabbi, doctor, lawyer, plumber, whatever you want to be called, Chacham, Nadiv, is a name that you merit based on your actions. Now we believe all Chachma is from Hashem. We daven 3 times a day. Chanenu me'yitcha, Chachma bina v'das. So the Shem HaTayar is not your essence, it's given to you, it's superimposed. Paroi, on the other hand, was arrogant in his Chachma, like it says, Eich taimru el Paroi ben chachamim ani. Paroi thought that wisdom was his. So Paroi said, your essential shame is your Shem HaTayar. The fact that you could decipher dreams that are mysterious and encoded in your great wisdom, that is your essence. That is who you are. It's not given to you by God. That's part and parcel who you are. But Yosef was not maskim to Paroi's name. Paroi wanted to make Yosef feel that Safnas Panech was not a God-given talent that Hashem gifted him, but it was his essential personality. And therefore, Yosef was not maskim, Elohoida. He acknowledged Shekol Chachmas Hashem, and therefore, even though Vayikra Shem Yosef, the pasuk says Vayoytse Yosef HaKaretz Mitzrayim. Safnas Panech did not go out and stand above Egypt. Yosef went out. He would not allow himself to be called his Shem HaTayar that Pari called him, but instead his Shem HaEtzem that his father gave him. Next, Safnas Paneach. Says Rabbeinu Bechaye, the words Safnas Paneach have no friend in all of Chumash. Meaning there's no parallel. We find the Nishmas, Mefaneach Ne'elamim. So this is not a Hebrew word. It would have to be that Paroi knew right? Rabbeinu Bechai says, no, but we don't find a similar word in Chumash, but we find it in Nishmas. Now, if it comes from Nishmas, then Paroi would have to know the language of Canaan, which is close by, and the Ramban says as well that Paroi was well versed in Hebrew because he was a neighbor of Israel. Says in Sagranana, how could that be? Doesn't the Gemara say that Yosef had to swear to Paroi that he won't tell anyone that Paroi doesn't know Hebrew? So how could you say Tzafnas Paneach comes from a Hebrew word? Says it's Sagranana, I disagree with the Ramban and Rabbeinu Bechai. Tzafnas Paneach is not in Lashon HaKodesh, and therefore it has no source in the Chumash. It's in the Torah. There are Aramaic words in the Torah as well, like Yegarso Hadusa. So Tzafnas Paneach is not Hebrew, it's Aramaic. This name is also Aramaic. Why is it in Nishmas? How could it be in Nishmas if it's not Hebrew? Says the Tzagranana, because once it's mentioned in the Torah, it could be mentioned in Tefillah. But a Nachri does not know Lashon HaKodesh. The word Tzonzanech is Aramaic. And why is it in the davening? Because it's already in the Chumash, but it's an Aramaic word. But Gentiles, they have no connection to Lashon HaKodesh. There are Arabim that speak Ivris, or there are other Goyim that speak Ivris. Nah, that's not Lashon HaKodesh. That's the language of Terach. There are two languages that Tzaddik says. There's Ivrit and there's Lashon HaKodesh. The Lashon HaKodesh is the language of the Jewish people. Ivrit is the language of Terach. Who speaks that language? Arabim, Paroi, but it's not a Hebrew word. It's a Yerushalayim Terach that comes from Eivar Nar. They have a script and a language, like Chazal say. That Batya called Moshe Rabbeinu Lashon HaKodesh, Kiminash Amayim Mishisu. So that means we see an Egyptian did know Lashon HaKodesh. You could say she already converted before she used that name. Like it says about Tered Bas Parei Lurchotz, to bathe and to convert. Therefore she was Zoicha to real Lashon HaKodesh. You could say the same thing. The name that Poitifera called Eishes Yosef is Asnas. That Rabbeinu Bechai says he called her that because she was found in a sneh. This is Lashon Ivri, not Lashon HaKodesh. But as all the Sfarim tell us, all the languages have a shorish in Lashon HaKodesh. Paroi knew Ivris. Poitifera knew Ivris. Goyim could speak Ivris. Jews speak Lashon HaKodesh. Tzafnas Paneach is not a Hebrew word. It's a Aramaic word, an Ivris word. The fact that it's in Nishmas, once it's in the Torah, it could be in the Tefillah. Marv Rabbi Sai, short day. I'm going to wish everybody a wonderful Shabbos. Thanks for joining. And bracha v'hatzlacha, a freilichen rest of Chanukah, and a wonderful Shabbos. Amen. Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.